PowerPoint is the professional software application that people around the world use to create presentations. And today, I'll show you how it works. My name's David Lieberman, and I've been teaching design and presentation software for going on 15 years now, and I still like it. It's fun. We're going to approach the learning like you've never touched PowerPoint ever before. If that's not you, feel free to jump ahead to a part that interests you. Keep in mind that as we go through these lessons, they're designed to be followed along with. So go ahead and open up PowerPoint, and I'll let you know to stop and pause the video and give things a try yourself. Learning works a lot better if you can actually apply your skills right away. So you might consider coming up with a presentation that you might have to give in the future, or that you can at least see yourself giving. Don't make it too complicated. We don't want to have to think too much while we're learning mechanics. Are you ready? Great. Come along with me and let's get started. Let's take a tour around PowerPoint and just kind of get used to how the software is laid out. When you first open it, you're presented with this view, which is basically asking you how would you like to start. There are a lot of nice designs that we'll play with later. Most of the time that you'll start with a blank presentation, or with your corporate template. To start a blank presentation, simply give it a double click. And then here's PowerPoint. You see the main slide in front of you, and over on the side here later you'll see all the different slides that we have in the presentation. Up at the top where all the buttons are, you've got the area called the ribbon. If you haven't used the ribbon much, the way that it works is you figure out which tab makes sense for you to be on, and then you click that tab and look around. For example, later when we insert pictures, it's not too tough to figure out which tab we're going to click on to insert a picture, right? So I go up to Insert, and I look around and find pictures. You really don't have to memorize anything. The way to do it is to click and then look around. After you find it 4 or 5 times, your brain will remember it all by itself, right? So if you look at the tabs, you'll get an idea of what's there just by looking at their names. For example, when we do animations later, you click the Animations tab. Playing the slideshow happens on the Slideshow tab. To review what you've done, or change the view, or even to change the overall design. Not too tough, right? Now there are a couple of tabs that you'll want to know about right away. The Home tab is where all of the things are that you use all the time. So if there's something that gets used quite a bit, it's probably on the Home tab. The File tab is where you have the normal start a new file, open a file, save a file, print, that kind of thing. When you click the File tab, this view shows up. It's kind of a behind-the-scenes view, which they officially call Backstage. To get back to the normal view, just click the circle up at the top with the arrow in it. Here we are back. Pretty nice, right? Okay, open up PowerPoint and click around on some of the tabs up at the top. You don't have to memorize anything, but get a good idea of what's there. Now, after you've looked around, let's look at a couple of other things. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see you've got a little zoomy tool here that'll allow you to zoom way out or way back in if you want to get all crazy with it. You can also click the minus or the plus, and then you've got this little guy over here in the corner that'll fit the whole slide to the screen. You don't really zoom in or out all that often, but every once in a while we'll experiment with having images that are sort of halfway on, halfway off the screen, and sometimes you have to zoom out some just so you can see the image halfway off the screen. Make sense? Great. In general, that's PowerPoint. Everything else from here on out will be how to use it. Feeling good? Great. Well then let's move on. One of the things that you'll do quite a lot is add new slides. So let's jump on that right away. On the Home tab, up on the ribbon, you'll see a big button right next to the Home tab that says New Slide. Now you'll notice as I roll over it that the button seems to have 2 pieces. If you click the top part of the button, it just goes ahead and adds a new slide. Normally what it'll do is add the same kind of slide you were on a minute ago, unless you were on a title slide. It figures that you don't want 2 of those in a row. Now, automatically adding a slide is cool, but what if you want a particular type of slide? Well, in that case, you'll hit the lower part of the button with the little down arrow on it. And here are all of the different types of slides that you can add. You'll notice that they have titles to help you understand what they're all about. Title slide, title and content, which should be called title and bullets because that's really what it is. And then you've got things like section headers for when you're changing topics. Also, you might use the blank slide. Now, generally with PowerPoint, less is more. We've all seen slides with too many things on them. So I tend to avoid the to content and comparison slides. But America, freedom, do what you like. I'm going to add another title and content slide, so now I have 3 slides. Take a minute, pause the video, and experiment with adding new slides. When you're ready, move on to the next section. Let's work with slides a little bit. Here I've got an example of an already filled in presentation, and you can get this presentation from the sample files download if you like. On the left-hand side, you can see all of the different slides that I have in this presentation. Note that you might have to scroll down to see all of the slides. Now the preview is a little bit small, but if you like, you can grab the divider, you'll know it's time when you see the double arrow on the cursor, and pull it open. Now it's a little bit easier to see those. I'll put it back because I don't like to admit I'm aging. To switch to different slides, simply click the slide. You'll see it show up in the main view. You can also reorder slides by clicking and holding and dragging them to where you want them to go. Sometimes you'll get a slide so perfect that you want to have another slide just like it, but with different information on that slide. At that point, it's often handy to just copy and paste the slide. You can do this by right-clicking the slide and choosing Copy, clicking where you want it to go, and then right-clicking the slide and choosing one of your paste options. Usually you'll want it to keep the same formatting it had before, so you'll choose the middle one that says Keep Source Formatting. Of course, you can use shortcuts for copy and paste as well. Control-C and then Control-V. If you have a slide over on the side that you don't want, you can just click it and hit the Delete key on your keyboard. It's pretty satisfying to press Delete, isn't it? Sometimes you'll want to work with more slides than you can see here over on the side at one time. You can click a slide, hold Shift on the keyboard, and click a slide further down to get all the slides in a row. Or you can click and then scroll and holding Shift, click another slide, and I'll get all of these slides all at the same time. Now, I mean, that works, but sometimes it's kind of weird to work with slides you can't really see. So PowerPoint has a whole different view built into it that's basically made for exactly this, working with more than one slide at a time. And you'll see that view down here in the lower right-hand corner. It's the one that looks like a picture of 4 slides in there. That one's called the slide sorter view, because initially it was used to sort your slides. If you click it, you see how I can see all of the slides at one time? I can still zoom in or zoom out. And now if I needed to select 4 or 5 slides all at once, I hold Shift and click them, and now I've got 4 or 5. And if I wanted to copy and paste, copy paste, now I have 4 or 5 there. I could also satisfyingly delete a number of slides at one time. Now you don't really use the slide sorter view very much, but it's handy when you need it. After you're done with the slide sorter view, you'll return to the main view by clicking the normal button that's right next to the slide sorter view. You don't really have to memorize which is which, just click the buttons down there until you find the one you want. Take a little bit to work with some slides, move slides around, copy and paste slides, maybe check out the slide sorter view. And when you're ready, let's move on to the next section. I've got a few slides here, but they don't really have any content on them. So let's change that. I'm going to go to my title slide, and right there where it says click to add title, I'm going to click to add a title. Creative title, isn't it? Down underneath where it says click to add subtitle, I can add a subtitle if I like, or alternatively, I can click and add my full name. Adding your full name, even if your audience knows who you are, gives your presentation a feeling of professionalism. If you choose not to add anything there, note that on the preview of the slide, there isn't anything down there. So you don't have to fill in these boxes or get rid of them if you decide you don't want them. But I kind of do like typing my name, so I'm going to add mine. Now, after you've added text, you can work with the text, much in the same way that you do when using a word processing or email program. You can click inside of the text and highlight the text, and then edit your text choices up on top on the ribbon. Now, before we get into that, there is a cool trick with PowerPoint. I mean, it's nice that you can highlight text and change that text, but if you're doing things like changing color, sometimes highlighting the text makes it look a little bit weird when you're concerned about layout. So here's the trick. If you click on the edge of the box, it's the same thing as selecting all of the text in the box. You'll note that when your cursor is right in the right place, it'll turn into 4 little arrows. So I give it a click and now the whole box is selected. Now when I do something to the text, it automatically does it to all of the text in the box, and I don't have to deal with that not so pretty looking highlight. Keep in mind that if you're trying to just work with one word or sentence, you'll still need to highlight that like normal. You'll note that up at the top you've got the standard font options, things like the font face and font size. Now keep in mind that PowerPoint is a design program. And so when you're approaching it, you'll want to approach it like it is a graphic design, not like it's a term paper. And one of the things that graphic designers use to communicate is font size. The thing is that we have this built-in thing with us that tells us when something's bigger, it's more important. When you see a city skyline, the most important building is the biggest one, right? Well, that works with graphic design as well. If something's important, you make it bigger. If something's not very important, you can make it smaller. Keep in mind that in general, if you go below 20-point font, someone in the room can't read it. This is 20-point font right now. Now you can choose font sizes, and it gives you a nice preview, and that's pretty nice. You can type the font size in the box, or you can use these guys that are pretty much my favorite. You see the A with the big arrow, and then you've got the A with the smaller arrow right next to it? In general, you don't say, this calls for 67-point font. You just want bigger. So if you click the A with the up arrow, bigger, 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 bigger. You don't have to say bigger, bigger, bigger while you're clicking, but it kind of helps. Normally what you'll want to do is just keep making something bigger until it's too big, and then back it off a little bit. That way you don't have to make too many choices. Remember, PowerPoint is basically a graphic design, so you don't have to be wimpy with your font sizes. If something's important, make it bigger. Make sure that the size difference is an obvious size difference. Otherwise, your audience's brains will catch that something's going on, but then they'll look at it and try and figure out what's going on. It needs to be obvious to get clear communication. Press pause and play around a little bit with font size. It's one of the most important communicators that you have at your fingers. Now, you've also got bold and italic, which are generally used for communicating inflection. You've got underline, which doesn't really get much use anymore. If something's important, make it big. Underline doesn't really say anything, and then people think it's a link. They'll try and click it. You've got shadows. Usually you use shadows when the text is on top of a picture and you're fading into the background. Strike through is usually used for accounting, and also for when prices go on sale. $1.99 crossed out, on sale 50 cents. And then you've got things like letter spacing, and uppercase, lowercase. Kind of nice, but in reality, we don't have all day to play around with text formatting. So normally what you'll most often play with is just the size of the text. And then sometimes you might change the color. This is color right here. If you open up the color, these are the standard colors. Depending on how your business PowerPoint template was set, you might have different colors in here that match your company brands. Of course, you've got left align and center alignment, and then right alignment as well. Take a second, add some text to your slides, and experiment with the different font formatting. When you're ready, let's move on. Now, sometimes you'll have a text box, but it's not exactly where you want it. So it's important to be able to move text around. Here's the way it works. The secret is you have to grab the text box on the edge. You'll tell you're in the right place when your cursor changes to a 4-pointed arrow. You see that? Then you can just click and drag it around. Conversely, you can click it once and then use the arrow keys on your keyboard. Arrow, arrow, arrow. It might be slower to move it using the arrow keys, but it also feels safer and you get it exactly right where you want. Sometimes the text box isn't big enough to hold all of your text, which is why it's nice to know that you can resize the text box. You can go from the corner to change height and width, or from the side or top just to change the height or the width. Up on the top, you've got this cool little spinny arrow for all of your spinning text needs. You don't really do that very much, but it sure is fun. And then there's one tool that a lot of people don't really know exists, but can be pretty helpful. Do you see how in the text box, the text is all lined up to the bottom of the text box? Up on the Home tab, right in the middle, you've got a choice about aligning text. That's where you can go and say, no, line up to the top, which I find pretty useful when I'm trying to build continuous formatting throughout my slides. Either way, you can resize text and move the boxes around, right? If you haven't done that, press pause now and go ahead and give it a shot. Now, sometimes you want a text box and there isn't one. Well, good thing you can insert a text box, right? To insert a text box, you use the tab up on the ribbon that makes the most sense. You've probably already guessed it's the Insert tab. So I give it a click and I look around. And looky right there, you've got text box. To insert a text box, just click the button on the ribbon and then drag diagonally. Now you've got your very own text box. Maybe I'll put a copyright notice in it. I can resize the text, move the text box, or work with the text in the same way that I work with any other text. Take a second and go practice making your own text boxes. Remember, it's on the Insert tab. And move on when you're ready. Much of the time that you'll be working with slides with bullet points on them, right? So let's learn how to work with bulleted slides. I'm going to go ahead and add a new slide. I'll hit the pull-down menu and choose Title and Content, which really means title and bullet points. Up at the top, I'll click to add a title. And where it says click to add text, why don't I click and add a bullet point? So one of the things that people ask about quite often is what font size is the best to use. The research says that in general, if you go below 20-point font, someone in the room can't read it. So you always want to stay above 20. However, barely legible is probably not what you'll want to shoot for. What you'll want to do is choose a font size that can be easily absorbed by your audience. And in general, the research says that starts around 36-point font, which sounds pretty big for a Microsoft Word document because it is. But it's not very big for an on-screen display. So I'm going to get up here and change my font size to 36. And then I'll write out a PowerPoint tip. In general, when typing bullet points, if you're writing out full sentences, you do want to add punctuation to those sentences. If they're not full sentences, you don't add punctuation. And it's generally best not to mix and match full sentences with incomplete sentences. Either way, when you're done typing your bullet point, you can simply hit Enter on the keyboard to add another bullet point. Get the idea? Here's another nice tip about bullets. And it revolves around how many bullets can you add without going overboard. What the research shows is that if you're just displaying a list of things, for example, a list of your locations in Northern California, you can actually just use as many bullet points as you want. But if you're actually talking about the bullet points, and people are expected to absorb information, it's best practice to use no more than 4 bullet points. Most people can only keep somewhere between 4 and 7 things in their head at the same time. So when you go past 4 bullet points, you start building stress with your audience. If you're thinking, but I need 8 bullet points, well then great, now you have 2 slides. Good? Good. Now, sometimes you have a sub-bullet point to your bullet point. The experts often advise that instead of using a sub-bullet point, to just say that thing out loud. You don't need to put everything on the slide. But there might be an instance where you need one. Here's how it works. You basically hit enter to add another bullet point, and type whatever it is that you need to type. After you've typed, you need to indent that bullet. Now there are a couple of different ways to do that, but the easiest way is up here on the ribbon. Do you see this little icon that looks like an arrow pushing things in? Well, that's what it does. If I click in the bullet and indent, oh, now I have a sub-bullet. I can keep sub-bulleting if I want to, how fun, or I can push it back the other way. If you're someone who likes to do things with a keyboard, you can click right next to the bullet point and then hit tab on the keyboard and it'll indent. Shift tab pushes it out the other way. You do need to be right next to the bullet point though. Go ahead and play with bullet points a little bit. In the next section, we'll get fancy with the bullet points. Yes, you may be saying, I like bullet points, but I kind of want to use something that makes me stand out some. I want some fancy bullet points. Well, lucky for you, PowerPoint does that sort of thing. But before you start going all crazy, keep in mind that bullet points look the way they do for a reason. And if you use a different type of bullet point, for example a check mark, that graphic, the check mark, is telling a story to your audience. It's telling your audience, hey, we're checking things off. If that's what you're trying to get across, then great. Go ahead and use a bullet point that helps you get your point across. If you're just using a bullet point to be fancy, you might consider not doing that, as it mostly just takes away from your message. Having said that, let's check out where all the cool stuff is. First off, you can change one bullet point or all of them if you highlight or click on the edge. You've got bullets, and then you've got numbered lists for when things need to be in a specific order. We're talking about directions, step 1, step 2, or sometimes rankings. I'll put it back on regular bullets. Now you might notice that next to the bullet, there's a little pull-down menu, right? Well, if I open that up, oh, here are all the different ones. For example, the aforementioned check mark. Now again, keep in mind that a fancy arrow doesn't really do anything except often be distracting. A good designer, which is what you are now, knows that basic, clean design often tells a better story than fancy design does. But if you're thinking, you know what, I don't care, and I want to put a skull and crossbones next to my bullet points, well then, lucky you, because all the way down at the bottom, do you see where you've got bullets and numbering? A lot of these menus work like this. You open something up and you've got your standard choices, and then down at the bottom, you've got the expanded choices. When I click that, you can change the size of your bullets or the color. You can actually choose a picture to use as a bullet point, like maybe a little Santa hat next to your Christmas list. Or if you want to go all the way with it, you can click Customize. Most font sets have lots and lots of characters that are kind of behind the scenes. So you can choose from those non-standard characters to use them instead of your bullets. There's lots of crazy stuff there. Now instead of scrolling through all of it, you can come up to this little pull-down menu up at the top where it says Subset, and you can choose the type that you want to see. For example, a dingbat are these little drawings we have in front of us right now. Or you can do drawings, or all kinds of other categories. Maybe I'll choose arrows. Ooh, look at all the arrows. And if I wanted to, I could point these arrows instead of normal bullets. When I click OK, you'll see they appear. So again, the way that I got in here was I either highlighted the text or I clicked on the edge. I went up to the bullets and chose bullets and numbering. Then I clicked Customize to go to town. I'm going to put it back on regular bullets because that's the kind of guy I am. And you can take a minute to go ahead and explore your way through the bullet points. Remember, just because something exists doesn't necessarily mean that you should use it. But while you're learning, it's always good to look at everything. Now, you might be saying to yourself, I like this, but I want more color, pizzazz, that kind of stuff. Well, good thing you're taking this training, because we're about to learn how to do that. Now, you already saw that you can change color and things like that up there on the ribbon. You might have also seen that you can change formatting when you highlight. You get the little quick edit popping up. Here's what you might not have seen, because it only appears under certain circumstances. Here, check this out. So if I click out in the middle of nowhere, we'll notice that up on top, the last tab seems to be this View tab, right? But if I click on some text, all of a sudden a new tab pops up, the Format tab. That tab only shows up when you're clicked on something. So it only shows up under certain context. They actually call it a contextual tab. And a lot of people don't even know it exists because it only shows up under certain context. See, the interesting thing is that all the really cool stuff is up under that Format tab. So for example, if I click the edge and then I click Format, there's all kinds of stuff up here, and we'll be in here looking at a lot of things as we go later on. Right now, let's take a look at the fancy word art styles. You see these styles kind of right here? You notice as I'm rolling over, it changes the preview? Well, there are a lot more of these. We've got this little scrolly button here. Well, it's not actually a scroll button. When you give it a click, you get these guys open up. So you've got like shadows and black text and fill and all kinds of other neat things in here. They call this word art because it's words and artsy, right? Now, some of these are a bit overdone, and some of them are actually pretty interesting. Like this light gray fill one is kind of neat, especially if we make the text bigger and bigger and bigger. Either way, the word art is up here. Right now, I'd like to take the chance to remind you to keep it classy. But also, let's get in and explore, play around with it. Go ahead and select some text and go up to the Format tab. Check out all the different word art that you've got available to you. Let's say that you've created this incredibly beautiful PowerPoint, and now you want to save it. Saving can either happen in this little disk icon, or by clicking the File tab and clicking Save. You now have the opportunity to save somewhere on your computer by clicking this PC, or by clicking Browse, or to save it up onto the cloud with a OneDrive account. Now, if you already use Microsoft Office at your work, you already have a OneDrive account even if you don't know about it. You can log on with your work credentials. Those will probably be the same ones that you use to log on to the computer. Saving to the cloud has the benefit of easy access wherever you are. Also, you can have more than one person working on the same file. So let's try that. I'll click OneDrive, and it wants me to sign in. And I'll sign in, and I can save to my OneDrive personal account. After double-clicking, you just save like normal. So next time I need to open this file, I can go to File to Open and find it on my OneDrive personal account. You can also access the OneDrive personal account by going to OneDrive.com. So pretty neat, right? What you can keep in mind is that saving works in the same way it normally does, but now you can save things to your free OneDrive account as well. Okay, so you've made a presentation, and now it's time to play the presentation. Or you just want to see what it looks like full screen. It's pretty easy to play the presentation. What you'll do is click the slide you want to start on, and all the way down in the lower right-hand corner, do you see this little icon that looks kind of like a movie screen? When you click it, it plays a slideshow. You can move through the slideshow by pretty much pressing any key on the keyboard or the mouse button, or you can use my favorite, the arrow keys on the keyboard. If you press the right arrow, you move to the next slide. If you press the left arrow, you move to the previous slide. Once you reach the end of your presentation, everything will go black, and if you keep going, presentation will come back. I'll play it again. And it's important to note that you can also end the presentation by pressing the escape key on your keyboard. Escape. Go ahead and try that. Make yourself a little presentation, and then play the presentation. Try moving through it with the arrow keys, and press escape when you're done. Now for those of you that like shortcuts, here's a nice shortcut to know. The shortcut to play the slideshow from where you are right now is Shift and F5 up at the top of the keyboard, the function keys. So it's Shift F5. It's kind of a weird shortcut, but it comes in super handy when you're using PowerPoint a lot. Go ahead and give that a try, Shift and F5. While building a presentation, it's important to look at the presentation in slideshow mode, full screen, quite often. Because sometimes things will look a little bit different when it's full screen than when it's smaller and being viewed within PowerPoint. Now that we've got the basics of PowerPoint, let's dig a little bit deeper into it. One of the things that you'll need to remember is that it's not a term paper. It's not an email, that PowerPoint is a graphic design. And if you look in any major publication, one where a professional graphic designer worked on it, you'll see a lot of pictures. Pictures help connect to us in an emotive sort of way. They help make things more real, and they look better. Check out the difference between this slide and this one. There's not really much difference. It's the addition of this one picture over on the side. But look at how much more finished and professional it looks. Interesting, isn't it? Inserting pictures in PowerPoint is really pretty easy. You go up to the Insert tab, and you click Pictures. And then you find the picture on your computer you'd like to insert. Give it a click, and there you go. Now you'll see that when the pictures come in, they come in pretty big, right? Just like text boxes, you can resize these pictures. You see the little handle up in the corner? So you grab it and you pull it. You can move the picture by clicking and holding it right in the middle. Then just drag it wherever you want it to go. Now, one important thing when resizing pictures, you do want to make sure you go from the corner and not from the side, because as you notice, if you pull it from the side, it's pretty easy to distort the image. Now, one thing about pictures, you'll want to make sure that you don't put it too close to anything. Beginners often end up crowding bullet points or other text with pictures. If I put the picture like this, do you see how your brain tries to associate it with the bullet point? Instead, give it some space. That might mean you have to make it smaller than you normally would. That's okay. Alright, try it yourself. Go up to Insert and click Pictures. Put a couple of pictures on a couple of different slides. Now, you can also use pictures you get off the web. The problem with that is that you probably don't have permission to use those pictures. And when you republish someone else's picture, even if it's just in a business meeting, technically you've broken copyright laws. Now, PowerPoint has this interesting feature called Insert Online Picture. And when you click that, what's actually happening is it's searching through Bing Pictures, but only showing you Creative Commons licenses. So those are licenses that are basically labeled for reuse. So maybe I'll search for Happy Man. And we get all of these coming up. Now, in real life, you can do whatever you want, but my team isn't really allowed to use cartoony looking images like this, what people normally call clip art. You don't see that stuff in real graphic design. And it just lends a childish kind of feeling to the PowerPoint presentation. So we have a no clip art ever rule. We just use pictures of people. I'm going to go ahead and show all web results. And here we've got pictures of people. Maybe I'll put this guy in here. Then I'll resize him. Get rid of the jellyfish. Put him down here in the corner someplace. Do you see how much nicer the slide looks all of a sudden? Give that a shot. Go up to Insert to Online Pictures. You can search through the Creative Commons licenses, or if you want to play it loose, for educational purposes, you can search through all pictures. When you're ready, move on and we'll dig deeper into the picture options you have available to you. So we've got pictures in. Now let's come in and play a little bit more and check out some of the advanced options. Let's say that I was thinking that this white slide is just kind of a little bit humphrey boring for me. So what I thought would be really cool is if we did something like this, where maybe the whole slide is a picture. It's pretty easy to do, you just need a big picture. So I'm going to go to Insert, to Pictures. I'll use one of these pictures that come with Windows. Maybe I'm a big fan of the jellyfish. So I'll go ahead and insert them. Now I might have to zoom out some so I can stretch the picture to make sure it covers the whole slide. If you're going to have a big picture, go ahead and make sure it covers the whole slide. Nobody needs to see a slide with weird white borders around the side. Now, once I stuck it in though, you kind of notice it's covering that text up, right? One of the things you're going to need to know how to do is how to change the stacking order of images or text boxes or all that kind of good stuff. They call it arranging. And the arrange features can be found on the Home tab. Right over here, you've got arrange. So I can go to arrange, and then notice you've got send to back or send backward. Send to back goes all the way in the back. Send backward goes one step. So for example, I could tell it send to back, and now you can barely see the text there until I change it to white. So why don't I do that? I go change the text to white. Maybe I'll make it bold and maybe even a little bit bigger. If I wanted to, I could even put a shadow on the text so it'll pop out a little bit more. I might move it around till it suits my fancy. My fancy does need some suiting. Ah, how lovely. Now, yes, we just looked at how to make a picture full screen, which is not really the most important part here. The most important part is that we can change stacking order or arranging images. Go ahead and try that. Put some text in a slide, then put a picture over the slide. Click the picture, and on the Home tab, go to Arrange and send that picture to the back. If you want to get all fancy like I did with the coloring, feel free to do that as well. Now, this picture is covering the whole slide, right? It is. The thing is, though, is that it's actually going off of the slide some. If I move the picture, you can see that the slide is actually smaller than the picture is. Now, I can move the picture around, and I can get a good idea of what it's going to look like by seeing the little preview over on the side, which is nice. But it's a lot nicer if the picture is actually just as big as a slide, so I can adjust things the way I want. So what I'm going to do is come in and crop the picture some. You can do this too. It doesn't need to be a picture that's bigger than the slide. It can just be any picture. Cropping basically chops off part of the picture. So the way it works is I go up to the Format tab, and over on the side you've got Crop. Now remember, the Format tab only shows up if you're clicked on the picture. If I click off, see it's gone now, but then it comes back. Alright, so I click Crop, and you'll notice I get these little black kind of lines here. I'm going to grab those black lines. You can tell you're in the right place because your cursor changes to a little black line as well. And I'm going to pull it, and if you look close, you can see the slide behind, right? Alright, so I'm just going to adjust it until it's right up on the edge of the slide. I don't have to be exact. It's better to be a little bit outside than it is to be on the inside. And I just kind of wiggle it around until it's right about the same size there. And then when I click off in the middle of nowhere, now I have a picture as big as the slide. So you can use cropping to trim a picture so it matches the size of the slide, or you can crop a picture that's already inside of your slide, and maybe you just don't want to see the whole thing. Either way, cropping's pretty handy. So why don't you go ahead and try that? Insert a picture, click the picture, and on the Format tab, click Crop. Here we're back to our old slide about PowerPoint tips. And I love this picture of this old guy. When my boss comes by and says, "Hey, can you use that jellyfish again?" I go, "Oh, I guess I can use a jellyfish again." So I'll delete him. Then I'll go up to Insert, to Pictures, and I'll put the jellyfish in. And I'll resize it so it looks pretty nice. But I can't help but thinking that the other picture I had before looked a little bit better. If you remember, the other picture didn't really have a border around it. It was kind of nice, right? Well, what's going on is that the more pictures remind us of things that we see in real life, the better we connect with them, and the better emotional transfer we have. So in real life, you hardly ever walk down the street and see somebody walking along with a big border behind them. And so it looks a little bit unnatural. You can either use pictures without backgrounds, you can learn to remove the background, which we'll actually do later, or you can learn these tricks. After you click an image, on the Format tab, you've got a bunch of different picture effects, or what they call picture styles. You can see more of those by hitting the little pull-down menu. And if you choose one of these that looks like something we're used to seeing, like a snapshot, all of a sudden you can start getting some really nice looks out of the pictures on the screen. Now there are a whole bunch of different styles in here, so you will have to be careful about the ones you choose. Again, what you want to do is choose ones that look more like things we see in real life. So sometimes pictures have borders around them, that's great. Very rarely do we see a picture in a circle floating above anything, so I don't know, I would avoid these ones. The ones with the fuzzy edges are not all that great, in my opinion. They sure are fun though, so take a minute and go explore all the different effects and styles, see which ones you like, which ones you might want to use later. Pretty cool, right? Now we've looked at a bunch of the different types of effects that you can play around with pictures. Let's look at some of the extra ones that are kind of hanging around. So I'm going to click the picture again and go up to the Format tab. And one of the things that you'll probably want to look at is rotate. You're normally not going to really be rotating pictures too often, but what does come in handy is being able to flip them. See, now the jellyfish is facing the other direction. This is super useful when you have somebody that you really want to use, but they're facing towards the outside of the slide. In general, you want people or anything with a direction like a car or anything like that to be facing towards the inside of the slide. Also, it's interesting to note that we get an impression of things moving towards the future when something's moving from left to right in the same direction that you read. And that things are looking towards the past if they're facing in the other direction. So in this case, I might actually kind of swoop this jellyfish around so he looks like future jellyfish. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay, so on the Format tab, you've got Rotate. You can press pause and go ahead and play with that. You can rotate if you like, but the flipping is really the important part. And then when you're done playing with that, you might as well take a look at some of these color effects. Now, most of the time, you're not really going to be playing with these too much. But there's some cool ones in there, like, ooh, look, you're all like future jellyfish. And you can apply color effects. So I have used this washout one here when I want to use an image as the background to a slide. So you might say wash out and then stretch it to cover the whole slide. Remember, you can send backward. Right, so that's kind of interesting. For the most part, though, you don't really use those other types of effects too much, but there's some fun ones in there, aren't there? Up under corrections, you've got different kind of brightnesses and that sort of thing. Really, if you're going to be correcting photos, you're probably going to want to learn Photoshop. And truthfully, most of the time, you don't really have that much time in PowerPoint. Let's get some pictures on here, do some bullet points, put it on the slide, and move on. Now, there is one that's fairly important. If you're going to be putting a lot of pictures inside of PowerPoint, the file size for those pictures can add up. After a while, you can't even email the slides to anyone. Well, what you'll want to know about is a button that you can click that'll compress the file size of those pictures so that they still look good, but it reduces the file size quite a bit. Here's the way that works. Generally, first you put in all your pictures, and then you give one of them a click. And on the Format tab, look, you've got compressed pictures, right? So I click that, and it says, hey, do you want to apply it to only this picture? Probably not, because I don't want to do this 800 times, so I'm going to uncheck that. It wants to know if I should delete cropped areas. So if I crop a picture and chop a whole bunch of that picture off, should it actually delete it? Sure, why not? And then you need to tell it, hey, what's your target output? Realistically, the email resolution here that they give is just fine for most screen displays. Although if you have a high-def screen display, you can put it on 150. Otherwise, you don't really need any of this stuff. So you basically just hit OK, and then when you save and close the document, it'll actually compress all those pictures. Now note that even though we told it to do it to all the pictures, it only does it to the pictures that exist in the PowerPoint presentation right now. So if we added in a bunch of other pictures, we'd have to come in and compress those as well. But it does make a huge difference. I have one presentation that's made for an all-day class that I teach, and it's something like 70 slides. Before I did the compression, it was around 45 megabytes, and now it's around 8. So certainly something that's nice to know about. Why don't you try that? Go ahead and put in a couple of pictures and go and compress the pictures. When you compress, 150 or 96 ppi stands for pixels per inch is generally good enough, and you'll probably want to uncheck apply only to this picture. So here's a nice thing to know about pictures. Which kinds of pictures are most successful? And when I say most successful, I'm talking about what kind of pictures, yes, does the audience like the best, but also what kind of pictures have the most emotional and intellectual transfer. Basically, what kinds of pictures influence your audience. Okay, so here's the answer. Ready? Pictures of people with no background halfway off the screen. Science can only really tell us what happens, not always why, but they think it's because pictures of people lend us emotional transfer. So we tend to feel the way that people around us feel, and we tend to think the same way that people around us are thinking. And so to make that more likely, we generally don't see people walking along the street with big square backgrounds around them. So the pictures with no backgrounds are generally more effective. Now when you slide a picture halfway off the screen, like we've got here, one nice benefit is that it gives you a lot of room for bullet points and things like that. But also we're evolutionarily conditioned to when we see part of something for our brain to go crazy imagining what the rest of that part is. Because back in the day, it could have been a lion, and if you didn't identify that lion, you didn't pass on your genes. What they do know is that pictures with people with no background that are kind of slid halfway off the screen are the most effective images to use in designs like PowerPoint. So often when you're trying to find images, it's helpful if you search for terms like transparent background. But what if you have an image maybe like this? It's a nice image, and you really like the feel, and the person looks like a real person, so you really want to use him, but it does have a background. What can you do? Well, you could apply one of those cool effects that we saw earlier, like maybe one of these guys here. Right, and that's okay. But it would be nicer if you could remove the background, wouldn't it? Now, if you have Photoshop or something like that, then you can remove the background really, if you know what you're doing, really professionally. But PowerPoint has background removal tools as well, so we're going to play with those. Now, there's a reason that Photoshop still exists, though. It's a little bit better at it than PowerPoint is, but a lot of people don't have Photoshop and don't really know how to use it either. And so this is sure better than the whole lot of nothing that you used to have. Just so you know, it only really works well if there's a strong delineation between the background you're trying to remove and the thing that you're trying to keep. So for example, this image will work pretty well because you can really see a strong line, right? Because his shirt's gray, if instead he was hanging out in a bunch of fog, it wouldn't be quite as easy to see the difference between his shirt and the background, and it wouldn't remove quite as well. Either way, here's how it works. You click the image, you go up to the Format tab, right? And all the way over on the left-hand side, check out Remove Background. When I give it a click, everything that's purple is going to get removed. Which is great, but it's removing his shirt and everything too. So the first thing you'll do is adjust this interior box so that it basically encases everything that you want to keep. And PowerPoint will sometimes, as it's going, change its mind about what it's going to keep and what it's not. Alright, so this is what it's giving me as a starting point. So everything that's purple is going to be removed. So I've got some things that aren't purple that I do want to remove, and some things that are purple, like his shirt, that I would rather keep. That's when these guys in the upper left-hand corner come in handy. So if I want to keep some areas, I'll mark those areas to keep. And if I want to remove some areas that aren't purple right now, I'll mark some areas to remove. If I totally mess it up, I can discard all the changes, and when I'm done, I just tell it keep. Let's mark some areas to keep first. Here's how it works. You see the button has a little pencil on it? What it wants you to do is give that thing a click and then draw a line just straight across the stuff you want to keep. Notice I didn't try and get really close to the edge. I just drew a big line and it went and found edges. So I'll draw again across some other purple stuff I want to keep. And maybe again. Ooh, it's doing pretty good. And I basically just keep marking areas I want to keep until everything that I want to keep is not purple. Making sense? Okay, well, there are totally some areas here I want to remove as well, and that works the same way. I just click the ones I want to remove, and I draw a big line across it and go, oh. You don't have to make those noises as you're doing it, but it's more fun if you do. Okay, so I drew lines with mark areas to remove on everything I wanted to remove to turn it purple. And I drew lines on mark areas to keep on everything I wanted to keep to make sure it's not purple. When I'm done, I click Keep Changes, and ooh my goodness, check it out. It's pretty nice, right? Now, one tip here is if you're going to remove the background, remove it when the image is big, and then make the image small. Because when you make the image smaller, it tends to sort of hide any mistakes. Heh, like sweeping under the rug. Look at how nice that looks over here. Okay, so to review, I'm going to come back to Format and Remove Background. I'll tell it discard all changes, so I'll sort of start over. But to review, you click Remove Background, adjust the rectangle in the middle, and then you mark areas to keep or areas to remove. In this case, I'm going to mark this area to remove, get rid of it, and I want to keep his shirt, so I'll start marking areas on his shirt to keep. Ooh, it's doing a nicer job for me this time. I'm almost done. Feeling pretty cool. When I'm done, I tell it keep. Yay! And then you make it small. Now again, this really only works well on images where you can really see the edge that you're trying to keep. But it's super fun to play with. So pause the video, go find an image that you want to remove the background from, click it, go to Format, and remove the background. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get used to it, but it's super worth getting used to. This next part is really pretty cool, and I use the heck out of it. There's a built-in screenshot feature inside of PowerPoint. Actually, the whole Office suite has it, Word and Outlook. I use it all the time in Outlook, and it's pretty nice. Here's how it works. You go to the Insert tab, which makes sense because we're going to insert a screenshot, and you go to Screenshot. Now, when you hit the pull-down menu, you'll see all the little windows that we happen to have open right now, and you can just click one of those windows if you like, and it'll go ahead and take a screenshot of the whole window. But the real strength of this comes when you click the screen clipping. What it's going to do is switch to the last active window you had, basically the last thing you had open, and allow you to take a piece of it. Here, check it out. Here's the best website you ever saw. You see it kind of went gray, that means it's ready to go. And I draw a box around whatever it is I want to keep. And blam, it pops straight in. Neat, right? Well, what's even cooler is that after you do it, you can resize things and you can apply effects. I'm not sure why, but I really like this one for screenshots. Even though it would be normally kind of cheesy to apply to a regular thing, it looks pretty cool on screenshots. Or if you want to keep it all classy, you can just do a nice border. Pretty nice, right? Okay, so again, the way that it works is you set yourself up by navigating to whatever it is you want to take the screenshot of. Maybe I'll go to Courses and click on PowerPoint. Looks pretty awesome. Maybe I want to take a screenshot of this area here. So I switch on back into good old PowerPoint. And I go up to Insert, to Screenshot, take a screen clipping. It'll switch over. After it turns gray, I can draw a box around whatever I want to keep, and then either position it, or resize, or apply an effect. It's pretty powerful though, isn't it? Go ahead and give it a shot. Play around with the screenshot opportunities a little bit. When you're ready, let's move on to the next part. PowerPoint comes with a number of drawing tools that you can use to create graphical elements in your slides. Now, it's important to note that you probably won't be coming in and doing lots and lots of graphic design. And you're definitely not going to be drawing things like bunnies and duckies and things like that. But if you look at this slide right here, when I put text on top of a picture, it looks kind of a little, it doesn't work right. On the other hand, if I come in and draw myself a nice shape, which we will learn how to do in a minute, and color it whatever color I want to color it, and maybe send it to the back. I sent it in back of the picture, so now I have to send the picture to the back. Oh, look at how much easier it is to look at. And being able to do things like that, to draw yourself a nice kind of box to separate an area, is really powerful and important in PowerPoint. And you'll notice that with my other slides, I've got a little box down at the bottom as well. In the advanced section, when you start drawing templates, you'll probably utilize these skills. Draw things like this. But if you'll notice, it doesn't really get that much more complicated than rectangles. Let's learn how to work with them a little bit. I'm going to make a new slide and I'll just go blank, which is also a nice way to meditate, and I'll explore my drawing shapes. Maybe I'll come up to the Insert tab, and I'll go to Shapes. Now, these ones up on top are the ones that you use most of the time. In fact, mostly what you'll end up doing is drawing rectangles. And I know they're not quite as sexy as all these other cool shapes in here, but really that's what you use. Every once in a while, you might find yourself drawing an arrow, or maybe a line arrow. And I mean, you can do what you want, but most presentations don't really have the ability to have smiley faces and still stay professional. Even though smiley faces and hearts and lightning bolts are really cool, you might want to keep it simple and clean, which also means professional. Either way, I'm going to click the little rectangle up here. And here's how you draw a shape. You just drag diagonally. After you drag it, you can resize it, just like we did with pictures. And grab it in the middle to move it around. Why don't you go ahead and pause and draw yourself a couple of shapes, resize them, move them around, make sure you can get them, and then we'll color them and make them fancy. Okay, now that you've got yourself a shape, the Format tab, just like everything else, is where all the cool stuff is. If you don't see the Format tab, it's probably because you're not clicked on the shape. So click the shape, there's Format. And click the shape, and there's Format. Now in the middle, you've got some pre-built shape styles. You open those up, some of them are pretty nice actually. All right, so the blue one is the one I'm on now. I can go black. Now I've got a nice little bar up at the top. If these pre-built shape styles aren't exactly what you're looking for, right next to it you've got shape fills, so you can do all kinds of different funky fill colors. You can even fill with a picture or a gradient, although most of the time we don't really have the time when we're building a presentation that we have to give later this week. So maybe I'll choose just some random color. You've got shape outline, so you can choose an outline color. Much of the time you'll actually be shutting off the color is really what you'll be doing here. Or you can change the weight. And if you want to get really funky, there's all kinds of effects that you can apply, like shadows and glows and bevels and things like that. You want to take it easy on these things though. It's really easy to overdo it and all of a sudden have something cheesy. Now, just so you know, every shape that you make is also a text box. You notice in the little preview here, they've got text in the middle of it. So you can click a shape and then just start typing. Although you notice that the text just sort of comes out right in the middle of the text box, it's hard to control exactly where the text shows up. Like let's say you wanted Learnit to show up right here. So most of the time that you're putting text over a text box, you're generally better to make them separate. So I would have a shape like this, and then I'd make a text box outside of it and put that text box wherever I felt like putting it. Make sense? Okay, let's explore with that a little bit. Go ahead and hit pause, draw yourself a shape, give it a click. Up on the Format tab, you can experiment with the built-in styles, or play around with filling and outlining and applying effects all by yourself. And remember, most of the time you're going to keep it pretty simple. All right, have a good time. Okay, so now we're making slides with bullet points and we're paying attention to the text and we're adding images and maybe drawing some shapes. We're pretty well there to build some nice slides. So let's work on playing the slideshow a little bit. You'll remember you can play the slideshow by clicking the Play Slideshow button. It's also in the upper left-hand corner up here if you like. Or if you're a fan of shortcuts, Shift and F5 plays the slideshow. So here I am playing the slideshow. Now when I move to the next slide, watch how it does it. Pop, pop, pop. So it just changes to the next slide, right? Well, the thing is that even though we're used to watching things change pretty quickly on a screen, in general, when something happens very quickly in life, blam, blam, it's not usually a good thing. You know what I mean? Here, watch it again and note how it feels just a little bit jarring to your brain to see it change that quickly. Pop, pop, pop. Right? Now, it's not the end of the world, but what's nicer is if it can kind of ease its way from one slide to the next. What we're really talking about is making transitions between our slides. So I'm back on the first slide here, and note that I have a whole tab up at the top for transitions. If I give it a click, now there are all kinds of transitions here. The classiest one is fade. So if I click fade, what I just said is, hey, when this slide comes in, it should fade its way in. Kind of nice and easy, right? Now, unless I want to fade each one of these slides in, I can click fade one time and then click apply to all, so I don't have to do them all one at a time. And then when I play the slideshow, watch how it goes now. Remember before how it was pop, pop, pop? Watch this one. Oh, nice. Do you see how much easier it feels? Now again, it's not a big thing, but it sure is better than the way it was before, isn't it? Tell you what, either build a little presentation or work with the one that you've been building as you go along. Go to the Transitions tab, click Fade, and tell it apply to all, and then play the presentation and watch how it kind of nicely goes back and forth. Now, you'll probably notice that there are a whole bunch of other types of effects, and a lot of them are really fun. Like, check this one out. Oh, right? Oh, that one's pretty nice too. See, the thing is though, is that most of these call a lot of attention to themselves. And although they're fun, most of the time when you're being fun or funny, if you're not doing it to prove a point or to help tell a story, you're actually taking away from your message. So you'll want to be really careful about using these fancy ones. Now there might be times where it makes sense. Like let's say that we're talking about when everything fell apart at our business. Oh, everything fell apart, right? Or maybe it's one of those, hey, does everybody remember last year? So I'm not saying don't ever use these. It's just don't use them when you're not using them to tell a story. Instead of that, fade is always your smooth one. Now there is an exception. You know how when you're watching a movie and it changes scenes and it kind of slowly fades through black? And it really does this nice, oh, it just changed scenes. You can use the same thing here inside of PowerPoint when you're changing subjects, and it does some really nice stuff for your brain. So let's say that in between things to know and big names that trust Learnit, that these are really two different subjects and I'm going to make a major shift. So what I could do is click the big names trust Learnit slide, click fade, and over here in effect options, I could tell it, instead of smoothly, fade through black. And it'll go, ooh. 1 second is kind of fast though. Instead, I'm going to crank it up to maybe around 3 seconds, which is a long time for an animation, but it also gives us that nice, easy feel that you get when you fade through black. Here, check it out. So I'll go back to my first slide and play the presentation. First slide, talk, talk, talk. All right, are you guys ready? We're going to change subjects. Check this out. It really gives you that feeling, doesn't it? Pretty neat. This is a good one to try yourself. Click a slide. You'll be setting the way that slide comes in. Click fade. And then under effect options, click through black. You'll also want to make sure that you adjust the duration so that the duration is usually around 3 seconds is good. All right, here's what you want to put into your head. In every presentation you ever make, every single slide should gently move from one slide to the next. There's never a real reason to be jarring. I can't think of any reason that you'll want to be jarring when you move from one slide to another. It's the little things that count. And this is one of those little things that counts big. So here's a really important point for you to know about PowerPoint in general. I mean, we've all been stuck in a room when somebody slowly read a slide to us. And it's no fun, right? Here's the thing though. If I show you a slide, you're going to read it. I can't stop you. I might as well not even bother trying. So if I show you a slide like this, and then I spend the next 3 minutes talking about these bullet points, you're going to spend most of that time sort of rolling your eyes in the back of your head saying, okay, I read it already, let's move on. right? Here's the secret. Only show the information that you're talking about right now. So for example, while I'm talking about handouts, I only show handouts. When I'm talking about manuals and so on and so on. So we're going to animate bullet points in one by one, and then I'll show you ways that you can know what bullet point is coming up so you don't have to memorize it. It's really pretty easy. Here's how it works. First, you make your bullet points, and then you click in one of the bullet points, and you head up to the Animations tab. Now note that I clicked in one of the bullet points. I didn't highlight the whole thing. If you highlight it all, it thinks you're just trying to do that one bullet point. But if you click in, then you can go to the Animations tab and click Fade. And you see it goes pop, 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 one by one by one by one. Now when we play the presentation, it's going to wait for us to click next, next, next. So it's just trying to show you it did something. You see it numbered the animation here as well, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I play my presentation. And I say something like, along the way, if you want to take notes, please feel free to take notes. And we already took notes for you. You can download those if you like at learnit.com/handouts. And some people would prefer to have not just a handout, they want a full manual. Those are available for you as well. Of course, if you really want to do well by yourself, it makes a lot of sense to sign up for an e-learning website so that when you need to learn something again, you can just pop back in and learn it. Of course, the e-learning websites are all taught by charming teachers. Do you see how much better it is when you bring up bullet points one at a time? In fact, bringing up bullet points one at a time is the most advantageous thing that you can do to keep your audience engaged. So again, to review the way that it works, you click inside of a bullet point, you go up to the Animations tab, and you just click Fade. Now I'm choosing Fade for a reason. Although we do have all these other fancy animations, and some of those we'll make use of in a little while, with text, because people try and read it the first second they see it, when it's doing things like flying in or floating or spinning, it's really disorienting. In general, you do just want your text just to fade. Keep it classy. All right, give it a shot. Make some bullet points, click inside one of them. On the Animations tab, click Fade, and then play your presentation full screen and move through the bullet points one by one. Pretty cool, right? Now you're really doing it. Let's say that I'm a salesperson here at Learnit, which is, by the way, an easy job because Learnit is so awesome. And I'm using this slide here to demonstrate the value of our brand. Now, the thing is that because we're so careful about who we hire and about our teaching methodology, that once we get somebody in a class, in general, those people become our clients. We have a lot of big names and smaller names too, and we use this slide to show that. Now, if I were a new salesperson who hadn't done the presentation 100 times already, I might not remember all of those things that I just said. So what a lot of people do, and we've all been the victim of this, is they write those things on the screen in a bullet point. Learnit is careful about who we hire. We have big companies and small companies as clients. Once we get somebody in a class, they usually turn into a client. And if you think about it, the presentation would have suffered if I had those on the screen. We don't need someone to sit there and read us bullet points. That gets really old really quick. But it's also impractical to expect that most people will remember the whole presentation or memorize it. So here's the solution. Instead of using the slide for notes, use notes for notes. In fact, there's a whole section down at the bottom of the screen here that are specifically for notes. You can grab it and pull it open a little bit like this. There's a little button all the way down at the bottom that collapses and opens it back up again, so if you don't see yours, you might have to do that. But take a second and go find the notes section in your slides. So then you add yourself notes. So I typed all of my notes down underneath. Now there are a couple ways that I as the speaker can see these notes. I can print them. And if you think about it, you never really hear anybody saying, "Oh my God, he's got notes, that's so awful." Right? But people do sit there and suffer when you slowly read them the PowerPoint. Right, so I've got those notes down there. To print the notes, you go up to File, to Print, like normal, right? But normally what it does is it just prints the slides. See right in the middle where it says Print All Slides? And then it says, hey, what are you trying to print? A full page slide, right? I can open that up and say, oh no, actually what I want you to do is print the notes pages. See, and there's the slide and there's my notes. Now I've got a problem though. The problem is, look, the notes are small. It's going to be really hard for me to read those without breaking the flow of my presentation, unless you know this trick. So I'm going to click the arrow to come back. If I highlight the text down here and go to the Home tab, you know where you change font size? Oh look, I'll change font size. I'm going bigger, bigger, bigger. I usually go to about 24 or something like that when I'm trying to read off of a piece of paper. And you'll note that it didn't get bigger down here. But if I go to File to Print, it did get bigger here. It's kind of a weirdness with PowerPoint, but you need to know about it if you're going to be printing your notes. So either way, the idea that you can write yourself speaker notes and then print them out so you don't have to read the slide to people is a really important part of PowerPoint. In fact, many experts suggest that you start your whole presentation in the notes area. You write out everything you want to say for every slide down in the notes area, and then you come back and out of that you choose what to put on the slide. Give that a try. Make yourself a new presentation, add a couple of slides, and just fill in notes. The presentation can be about anything, and then come back and decide what needs to go on the slide, what's actually helpful. Either way, if you're going to remember a trick here, the trick to remember is if you highlight text and make it bigger, it won't show bigger in the notes area, but it will when you print it. Nice, right? So, assuming that you've been taking this course from the beginning, many of us started out with no PowerPoint skills at all, and now we're up to right around the 90% level or so of PowerPoint, meaning you know more than about 90% of the people that use PowerPoint on a day-to-day basis right now. So you can imagine there's a lot to learn coming up that'll put you into the stratosphere of master PowerPoint user. Now is a really good time to put your skills to use though. So let's do this. Go ahead and start yourself a brand new PowerPoint. Come up with something that you might have to give a presentation on, and then make a PowerPoint presentation for it. Remember that it's a good idea to start with your speaker notes and then come and fill in the slide. That you'll use images to influence your audience. That you'll make the important parts of text bigger than the non-important parts. Transition gently between slides, and make bullet points fade in one by one if you're going to be talking about them separately. Take a little bit to play with it. Remember, PowerPoint is a graphic design, although it's a basic graphic design. So making things look nice is important too. When you're ready, you can move on to the advanced classes, and you'll know you're ready because you're pretty proud of yourself.